Hey guys, today we are talking about how to quote your project as a filmmaker. Let's get started. Thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Guillaume Cornet. I'm a filmmaker and I run my own production house here in Australia. My goal through these videos is to share my passion of cinematography and as well how to make a living from it. There is that question that keeps coming back, that is, how much do you charge for real estate? How much do you charge for a wedding? How much do you charge for a commercial project? How much do you charge for cinematography? I'm going to try to cover that topic in less than 15 minutes while covering as much as possible. The information I'm going to provide you through this video, guys, is based on my own experience over the past years working as a full-time filmmaker. I've been making videos pretty much my whole life and it was mostly for fun, but 5 years ago I got my first paid gig and some people, friends of family, actually offered to pay me to film their weddings. At the time I charged 250 euros. That wedding was 250 kilometers away from where I lived. I had to film from 8 in the morning to midnight, and on top of that I had to stay overnight and pay for accommodation. Yes. So yes, in short, I didn't make any money. I actually lost some money on that job. And this brings me to the point of that video. My video is not to give you an exact price on how much you should charge for a wedding today, but it's more also to give you tips and tricks on how to quote your project based on the expenses that you may have, but as well on how much money you want to make. Over the past 4 years making videos for a living, I've quoted many projects, and trust me, I've also made many mistakes at the beginning. Quoting projects can be quite time consuming, and I strongly advise you to create processes to streamline the whole process. So to answer your question, how much should you charge for making that video? Unfortunately, I'm going to answer it depends, and this is why. It depends of the project, it depends of the location, it depends of the requirement, it depends of the amount of work required for editing the whole thing. It depends how complex is the editing. Are you just directing? Do you need to hire a crew? Do you need an audio guy? Do you need a grip? It depends how long you need to be on set. It depends if you need to deliver the project the next day. Do you need to find talents? Have you got insurance for your gear? And yes, it also depends of the client. If you're working with a multi-million-dollar business with a lot of employees, this business has a lot more at stake through that video than just a small business with 10 employees, let's say. Therefore, each of them should be quoted differently. There are many different ways of quoting a project, but it always comes down to what is the base cost of producing your video, your expenses, and the actual profit. Because in the end, remember, you just don't want to break even, you actually want to make money and grow your business. So I'm going to start with all the costs of filmmaking that comes to my mind, and I'm sure I'm going to forget some, so feel free to add them in the comment if I forgot them, and then I'll let you know how I quote my clients. Quoting a project too low or giving a discount to a client is not only going to make you lose money on the project, but there is as well a whole psychology aspect behind it. And this also applies to everyone in the creative industry. I believe underquoting is the best way to ruin your confidence. Stretching a budget means you consciously know that you'll have to make concession to get to the result. And the less happy you are about the project, the less likely your client is to be. For this first part covering all the expenses of filmmaking, we are going to break it down into 3 categories. The production of the video, the post-production of the video, but as well the pre-production. And this is something we often tend to forget. The pre-production will include research, script, meeting with the clients on the phone or in person, the location scout. Most of the time you just don't want to show up at the location, but you want to have a look before. And there is something else that you may have forgotten, is the time creating that quote or creating that proposal to the client. Of course, you're not going to win all the jobs, but you need to at least make money back on the time you spent making that proposal. Something I wanted to say, if I mention any price in this video, this is going to be in Australian dollars. So just let's do a quick research. $3 to US dollars. As of today, $1 is worth 72 cents US dollars. And for our Europe-based audience, is there any Frenchies? 61 cents euros. So remember, you are a business, you need to be able to pay your bills and you need to be able to pay yourself. So I'm just going to give you examples. Obviously, your kit is going to be different from someone else. I'm just going to take this as a standard, but if you start filmmaking today, you need a camera, a lens, probably an ND filter, that would be good, some batteries, and eventually a gimbal. With all of the above, you can pretty much create any kind of content, and you should be covered for pretty much all standard projects. In order to frame the project, let's take an example. You're going to film a real estate video that needs to be 60 seconds long. There will be some drone shots, but as well some interior shots with the gimbal. And then comes the post-production. So in terms of equipment, what do you need to edit a video? You need a computer, you need media storage, and eventually you need an editing software as well. You probably have to pay for music licensing. And finally, you need to be able to share that video with the client. So any sharing platform like Google Drive or Dropbox, some are free, some are not. And now I'd like to add a category of associated costs that we always try to forget, but that is still there. And then comes travel costs. Going to the shoot location obviously has a cost. You need to pay for your fuel, you need to pay for the maintenance of your car, you need to pay for the tires, you need to pay for the insurance, the depreciation, and so on. So basically for this one, I like to use the cents per kilometer method. And if you jump on the website of the Australian Tax Office for 2020-2021, the rate is 72 cents per kilometer, which means if you do 100 kilometers to go to your shoot locations back and forth, the rate would be $72. But keep in mind, this is just the expense to go to the shoot location and back. This is not including your time. So if you drive 1 hour going there and 1 hour going back, I will have to invoice 2 hours of my time on top of this. And also don't forget that you'll have to pay taxes at the end of the year. Okay, so now what if I asked you to do that real estate video for $500? Would you do it? Obviously, all of the above depends on how much you are involved and how much the client is asking you actually to be involved in the project. Some clients will just want you to show up, film and give them the footage, and then you are done. And sometimes clients will need you to do all the work. They have very little idea of what they want, but they just know they want a video. So they will come to you and you need to figure this out. I hope I didn't lose you yet. We have only covered the expenses of the project now. How much should you charge? And the first advice I'm going to give you is never charge per hour. So let's take an example. You are a filmmaker, you have some experience, you edit ultra fast, and you're going to charge $50 an hour. And now let's take your competition. They're going to still charge $50 an hour, but they are not as good as you at editing, and they're going to charge the same rate, but they are going to take double the time, which means instead of doing the project in 1 hour, they're going to do it in 3 hours. Do you think it's fair that they're getting paid $150 and you're only getting paid $50 despite the fact that you are much faster? No, it's not. And this is why charging hourly is not a good option. Hourly rate is what is hugely penalizing efficient creators. And the client will care about how quickly you can deliver your project, which means the hourly rate of that person who is very efficient is going to be probably around $200 an hour, which seems huge in comparison to the $50 an hour, but he did the job 3 times faster. So my recommendation is to find a project rate and charge according to the value you are providing to the client and not hourly. I know this is not an exact answer on how much you should charge, but the number you are worth is depending on the work you are capable of. So hourly rate, no go. To make it simple, my recommendation would be to create a base package rate, and then from that base package I will build my quote with add-ons depending on what are the client's needs. But don't get me wrong, if you are using a Sony A7R III for your real estate video and a gimbal, it doesn't mean that you have to charge the client $5,000 because this is the price for the camera, the lens and the gimbal. However, you need to cover your costs, and let's say 10 projects later having paid off entirely your equipment and on top of that made some money. So regarding the use of your gear, get inspiration for example from rental houses, because even if you own your own gear, you obviously need to pay for it and pay for the maintenance. To give you an example, this year I had to send for repair my Sony A7R III, my Sony G Master 16-35, my small HD was broken, as well as my Ronin S who needed to be fixed, the Bluetooth stopped working, and my MacBook Pro motherboard had to be replaced by Apple. Don't forget those costs. So my advice is that you create a spreadsheet covering all the expenses from the production and the post-production, and as well your fee, because you need to make money, and this number fluctuates, but a rule of thumb is to add 50% of the value. I would as well always quote a bit higher because your client will probably try to take the price down. Otherwise, if your client says yes right away, it's probably that you didn't quote high enough. Once you figured out a rate, stick to it, stick to your rate. And if the client keeps asking for discount, don't give up, but maybe think about removing some services that you're offering instead of discounting yourself. So if it's an 8-hour shoot, stick to 8 hours, don't do overtime, or make sure during the quoting process that you mention that overtime is going to be that much. And what I just said is very important. The trick is to have planned everything before, which means in the quote, try to anticipate every additional cost that may incur during the shoot so that there are no surprises, let's say when you do overtime and that you have to charge the client. Protect yourself by setting boundaries with the client from the early stage of the project. Paid overtime, service provided, exact number of revisions, for example, have to be mentioned in the contract before or in the quote, for example, if you don't have a contract. Transparency is always a good start for an healthy client-creator relationship. And something we all have heard, I'm sure, is something along the line of, we'll give you more work in the future, can you give us a discount now? And the answer is no. You want to reward loyal clients, not newcomers. And it doesn't mean that you should fire your client right away. There are ways around it, and one of it is maybe to sell 5 videos at once. If they pay upfront for 5 videos, then it makes sense to give them a discount. The next and the last tip I have is actually inspired from a question I received a couple of days ago. This is getting paid against exposure. So let's say, can you do a video for me? We are going to tag you and give you exposure. But the main question you should ask yourself is, can you quantify it? Does 1 million views on an Instagram account will convert into 1 new client? Keep in mind that exposure, unfortunately, 99% of the time won't give you any jobs, and unless the person or the business providing you the exposure is very, very well positioned into your market with a bunch of clients ready to hire your services, it doesn't pay the bill. My main issue with exposure is that you are working for free and then taking the whole risk on eventually getting a client after. So in the end, you have to ask yourself, is it a fair energy exchange? Will the exposure you have been given provide you with enough work to make it up for the free work you've done for the exposure? My way of thinking is that I don't need the client needs me. So if the client still doesn't want to pay what you are worth, find a client who will. That's it, guys. This is the end of this video. I hope I could provide you with some useful information about how to quote your project and how to invoice your clients. Once again, there is not one exact answer, as every project and every client is different. But by using those tools, I hope I can make you feel more confident on your quoting process. Let me know in the comments below if you have any questions, obviously. Please subscribe and like this video if you actually learned something from it. And I'll see you next week. See ya. That's going to be in the video. Hello? Oh. So annoying. Is that the coffee machine? I need my own studio.